I never expected a stupid comment section to change my life. Seriously. If you told me 6 months ago that I'd fall for a guy because of a sarcastic reply under a cooking video at 2 in the morning, I would have laughed in your face. But that's exactly what happened. It started during one of the loneliest periods of my life. I was 26, working remotely from my tiny apartment, barely seeing anyone outside of grocery store cashiers and my barista downstairs who misspelled my name every single day even though I went there constantly. My whole routine had become painfully repetitive. Wake up. Work. Microwave food. Scroll mindlessly. Sleep. And somewhere in between all of that, I got addicted to reading comments online. Not posting. Just lurking. There was something weirdly comforting about random strangers arguing about movies, confessing embarrassing stories, or flirting under TikTok clips like their lives depended on it. It made me feel less alone somehow. That's where Cliff came in. At first, he was just another username. CliffR92. No profile picture. No bio. Just this dry, annoyingly funny sense of humor that kept showing up under videos I watched. One night I was watching this disaster cooking tutorial where a guy accidentally set a towel on fire while making homemade pasta. The top comment said, "Bro created Italian arson." And underneath it, Cliff replied, "Grandma rolling in her grave whispering Mamma Mia." I laughed so hard I actually snorted. Then I kept noticing him everywhere. Under gym videos. Under relationship posts. Under random memes at 1 a.m. Always funny. Always weirdly smart. Never trying too hard. A few days later, I made my first reply to him. I don't even remember the video anymore. Something dumb about terrible dating advice. Cliff had commented, "If he says good vibes, only run immediately." And before I could overthink it, I replied, "Same energy as men holding fish in profile pics." A minute later, he answered, "Okay, but what if it's a really big fish?" I stared at my phone, smiling like an idiot. That should have been my first warning sign. After that, we started running into each other constantly online. At least it felt constant. Every night I'd end up searching comments hoping I'd see his username pop up. And every time I did, my mood instantly got better. It became this stupid little routine. I'd leave sarcastic replies. He'd answer. Then somehow we'd end up having entire conversations buried under random videos. Other people even started liking our exchanges. One girl replied, "Y'all need to just date already." I remember staring at that comment for way too long. Because the thing was, I didn't even know if Cliff was gay. There were hints maybe. Tiny ones. The way he talked sometimes. The jokes he made. The fact he never mentioned women. But nothing obvious. And I definitely wasn't about to ask. So instead, I kept things casual. At least I tried to. One night around midnight, I posted a comment under some video about worst first dates. I wrote, "A guy once brought his mom unexpectedly." A minute later, CliffR92. "Please tell me she paid at least." I grinned immediately. Me. "She complained about the restaurant prices." Cliff. "Marry her honestly." That turned into a 2-hour conversation. 2 hours. In a comment section. At one point he replied, "Okay, wait, you're actually funny." And I swear to God my stomach flipped. Which was ridiculous. I didn't know this man. I hadn't even seen his face. But suddenly I cared way too much about what some stranger online thought of me. The next morning, I woke up to a notification. Cliff had followed me. My heart actually skipped. I opened his profile way too fast. Still no real profile picture. Just some dark photo of mountains. But now I could see more of his comments, old posts, random music recommendations. And one thing became painfully clear. I liked him. A lot. That scared me more than I wanted to admit. Because online feelings are dangerous. You build people up in your head. You create fantasy versions of them. I knew that. Still, I followed him back instantly. For the next week. Things escalated fast. We moved from comments to direct messages. At first it was memes, then voice notes, then entire conversations that lasted until 3 in the morning. I learned he lived about 4 hours away from me. He worked in marketing, loved terrible horror movies, had a habit of listening to sad music while cleaning his apartment. And his voice. Jesus Christ. The first voice note he sent caught me completely off guard. Low. Warm. Slightly rough, like he'd just woken up. "Okay, first of all," he said, laughing softly, "your take on pineapple pizza was aggressively hostile." I replayed that voice note at least 10 times. Maybe more. Not proud of it. The weirdest part was how easy talking to him felt. No awkwardness. No trying too hard. Just easy. Like we'd known each other forever. One night we ended up talking about relationships. Not directly about us. Just generally. Cliff sent, "Dating apps make me want to walk into traffic, honestly." I laughed quietly to myself before replying. Same. Everyone either wants marriage immediately or can't hold a conversation. The typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then finally. "You're easy to talk to, though." That one hit me harder than it should have. I stared at the message for a long time. Then typed, "You are too." A minute passed. Then another voice note came through. This one quieter somehow. "You know what's funny?" Cliff said softly. "I look for your comments now before I even watch videos." My chest tightened instantly. Because I did the exact same thing. And suddenly this didn't feel casual anymore. At all. That night we stayed up until almost 4 talking about everything. Family stuff. Embarrassing high school stories. The fact I hated phone calls but somehow wanted to hear his voice constantly. At one point he laughed and said, "Feels weird that a comment section led to this." I smiled into my pillow. "Yeah," I admitted quietly. "Kinda does." There was a pause. Then he asked the question that changed everything. "So, can I finally see what you look like?" My stomach flipped so hard it actually hurt. Because up until then, neither of us had sent pictures. And suddenly I realized this whole thing was becoming real. I spent almost 10 minutes deciding which picture to send. That's how pathetic I'd become. I took selfies. Deleted them. Took more. Hated every single one. Too posed. Too awkward. Too desperate. Meanwhile, Cliff had already sent, "You alive over there, or did choosing a pic kill you?" I groaned into my pillow. Finally, I settled on something simple. Just me sitting on my couch in a black hoodie, messy hair, tired eyes. Casual enough that it didn't look like I was trying too hard. Even though I absolutely was. The second I sent it, instant regret slammed into me. I threw my phone across the bed dramatically. "Cool," I muttered to myself. "Now he's gonna disappear forever." 30 seconds passed. Then my phone buzzed. I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped it. Cliff. Oh wow. My stomach dropped. Oh wow. What the hell did that mean? Before I could spiral further, another message came through. "Okay, you're ridiculously cute, actually." I physically covered my face with my hand. No one had called me cute in months. Maybe longer. And for some reason hearing it from him mattered way too much. I typed back, "You're legally required to send one now." A few seconds later, 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a photo loaded. And Jesus Christ. Cliff was gorgeous. Dark hair. Scruffy beard. Broad shoulders filling out a gray t-shirt. Sharp jawline. Warm brown eyes that somehow looked soft even through a grainy phone picture. He looked like the kind of guy who'd accidentally ruin your life without even trying. I stared at the picture way too long before responding. "Wow, okay, rude." His reply came immediately. "Rude? You had no business being that hot." He reacted with a laughing emoji. Then, "You think I'm hot?" I could have played it cool. I should have played it cool. Instead, I typed. Obviously. The typing bubble appeared instantly this time. Good. That single word completely wrecked me. After that, everything shifted. The flirting stopped feeling accidental. It became constant. Every day started with messages from him. Every night ended with us talking ourselves to sleep. He'd send selfies from work. I'd send pictures of my coffee or my disaster cooking attempts. One afternoon, he sent a gym mirror pic with the caption, "Trying not to die today." I nearly choked on my drink. Because seeing him fully hit me like a truck. The man was built. Not in an intimidating influencer way. Just solid. Thick arms. Broad chest. The kind of body that looked ridiculously good in tight shirts. I zoomed in accidentally. Okay, maybe not accidentally. A minute later. "You've been offline suspiciously long." I laughed. "Respectfully, shut up." "So you were staring. You posted that on purpose. And it worked." I hated how much that smiley face affected me. The worst part? I started craving him. Not just emotionally. Physically. His voice notes became dangerous after midnight. Especially when he sounded sleepy. One night he sent me a voice message while lying in bed. I could hear rustling sheets in the background. "Can't sleep," he murmured quietly. "So congratulations, now you have to entertain me." That low, sleepy voice went straight through me. I listened to it with my headphones on while staring at my ceiling, trying very hard not to imagine what he looked like in bed. Which obviously made me imagine it more. Things got worse a few nights later. We were texting while I watched some terrible reality show. At one point, Cliff randomly sent, "What are you wearing?" I froze. Then immediately, "Wow, that sounded dirtier than intended." But it was already too late. My heart was pounding stupidly hard. I replied, "Just a t-shirt and shorts." A few seconds later, "Hot." I bit my lip so hard it hurt. "You haven't even seen it." "Doesn't matter. I know you're hot already." I swear that man knew exactly what he was doing to me. After that, the tension between us became impossible to ignore. Every conversation carried something underneath it. Something heavier. Late one night we ended up on FaceTime for the first time. I almost didn't answer. I was nervous as hell suddenly. But the second his face appeared on my screen, smiling lazily from his couch, all that nervousness melted into something warmer. "There he is," Cliff said softly. God. Hearing him say that while actually looking at me nearly killed me. "You make me nervous," I admitted before I could stop myself. He smiled wider at that. "Good nervous or bad nervous?" "Annoyingly good nervous." He laughed quietly. For the next 2 hours we talked about everything and nothing. I learned he rubbed the back of his neck when he got embarrassed. That he snorted when he laughed too hard. That his voice got lower when he was tired. And the more I watched him, the more unreal this whole thing felt. Because somehow this insanely attractive guy genuinely liked talking to me. At one point he disappeared off camera to grab water. When he came back, he changed shirts. Or technically removed one. He sat back down shirtless without even thinking about it. And I completely lost my train of thought. Cliff noticed immediately. A slow grin spread across his face. "What?" he asked innocently. I blinked rapidly. "Nothing. Alex. I hate you." He laughed harder. "You're staring." "Well, whose fault is that?" "My fault, apparently." His confidence should have annoyed me. Instead, it made my stomach twist in the best way. The conversation slowed after that. Not awkward. Just quieter. More intimate somehow. Eventually, Cliff rested his head back against the couch and looked at me for a long moment. "You know what's weird?" he said softly. "What?" "I feel closer to you than people I've known for years." My chest tightened instantly. Because I felt it too. And that scared me. A lot. "You ever think about meeting?" he asked carefully. There it was. The question I'd been both wanting and dreading. I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I admitted quietly. Me too. Silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable. Just heavy. Then Cliff smiled slightly. I think I'd kiss you immediately. My entire body went hot. He said it so casually, too. Like it was obvious. I stared at him speechless. Cliff's expression softened. Was that too much? No, I said quickly. Too quickly. No, I laughed nervously. You can't just say things like that. Why not? Because I'm trying to function. He leaned closer to the camera slightly. And are you functioning? Not even a little. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. The worst part was knowing he could probably tell exactly what he was doing to me. Then his voice dropped softer. Tell me to stop and I will. I should have. Honestly, I probably should have slowed everything down. Instead, I looked at him through my screen and quietly admitted, I really don't want you to stop. After that conversation, there was no pretending anymore. Whatever this was between me and Cliff had officially crossed the line from flirting into something real. And honestly, that terrified me. Because online chemistry is one thing. Late-night calls and cute messages are easy when there's a screen between you. But feelings? Real feelings? Those were dangerous. Especially when you hadn't even touched the person yet. Still, either of us pulled away. If anything, we got worse. We started falling into couple habits without even realizing it. Good morning texts. Sending each other pictures while grocery shopping. Calling during lunch breaks just to complain about work. One afternoon I was at Target buying detergent when Cliff texted. Important question. What? Would you still love me if I became bald? I burst out laughing in the middle of the aisle. You're not bald. Answer the question, Alex. Depends. Wow. Is it stylish bald or divorced youth pastor bald? His reply came instantly. I hate you. That's not what your voice notes say. A minute later, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. I answered, smiling immediately. You're annoying, Cliff muttered, though I could hear the grin in his voice. And yet you called me. Unfortunately, I'm obsessed with you. My heart stuttered. He said things like that sometimes. Casually. Like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, every single one lodged itself directly into my chest. That same night we ended up talking until almost 2 a.m. again. I was lying in bed, lights off, phone resting against my pillow while Cliff talked about some awful coworker he hated. And then this guy has the audacity to say circle back for the 5th time. Cliff groaned. I almost walked into traffic. I laughed quietly. You're so dramatic. You like it? Unfortunately. There was a soft pause. Then Cliff asked quietly. You in bed already? His tone changed completely when he asked it. Lower. Slower. Immediately my stomach tightened. Yeah, I admitted. What are you wearing? I rolled my eyes even though he couldn't see me. You asked me that a lot. Maybe I enjoy picturing you. Jesus Christ. I pressed my face into my pillow. Cliff. What? He asked innocently. You know exactly what you're doing. A low chuckle came through the speaker. Yeah, he admitted softly. I do. That silence afterward felt charged. Not awkward. Just thick with tension. I could hear him breathing through the phone. Then quietly. You ever think about me? I swallowed hard. All the time. His exhale sounded shaky this time. Yeah? Yeah. Another pause. Then Cliff's voice dropped even lower. Because I think about you constantly. That confession hit harder than I expected. I stared into the darkness of my room, heart pounding stupidly fast. There was something dangerously intimate about hearing someone admit that in the middle of the night. Especially someone you were already falling for. Eventually the conversation drifted softer. More personal. We talked about relationships we regretted. People who hurt us. The weird fear of wanting someone too much. At one point I admitted. I think I'm scared this isn't real. Cliff went quiet for a second. Then softly. It feels real to me. God. I hated how easily he got to me. The next weekend, things somehow escalated again. Cliff was out drinking with friends when he called me unexpectedly around midnight. The second I answered, loud music blasted through my speaker. "Alex!" he yelled happily. I laughed instantly. "You sound drunk." "I am drunk." "No way." Shocking, I know. I could hear people shouting in the background while Cliff walked somewhere quieter. Then suddenly his voice got closer. "There," he sighed. "Better. You okay?" "Miss you." The words came out so naturally that my chest physically ached. "You're drunk," I said quietly. Still true. I sat there smiling like an idiot. Then Cliff laughed softly. "You know what my friends are making fun of me for?" "What?" "They think I'm in love with someone." My heart stopped. I tried to keep my voice steady. "And what did you say?" "That they're annoying." "That's not an answer." "No," Cliff admitted. "It's not." The silence after that was brutal. Because suddenly this whole thing felt terrifyingly close to becoming serious. Then I heard someone in the background yell, "Cliff, your internet boyfriend's still on the phone?" Cliff groaned dramatically. "Shut the hell up." I couldn't stop laughing. But underneath the humor, my chest was burning. Internet boyfriend. The words shouldn't have affected me so much. But they did. A lot. Later that night after he got home, Cliff called me again. This time quieter. Sleepier. "I have a confession," he murmured. "What?" "I showed my friends your picture." I sat up immediately. "You what?" "They asked what you looked like." "Cliff." "What?" He laughed. "I'm proud of you." The stupid warmth that spread through me at that sentence was embarrassing. Then he added softly, "They all said you're out of my league?" I snorted. "That's literally insane." "Nope," he said immediately. "Very real, actually." There was genuine sincerity in his voice now. And somehow that affected me more than the flirting ever did. Because underneath all the teasing and tension, Cliff actually liked me. Not just physically. Not just online entertainment. Me. A few days later, I was making coffee before work when my phone buzzed. "Cliff. I did something impulsive." That message alone should have worried me. "What did you do?" 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, "Check your email." I frowned and opened my inbox. At first my brain didn't process what I was looking at. Then my stomach dropped. Flight confirmation. My apartment suddenly felt very, very quiet. I stared at the screen while my pulse exploded in my throat. Because Cliff had booked a flight. To see me? This Friday. I immediately called him. He answered on the first ring, sounding way too pleased with himself. "You're insane," I said the second he picked up. "You're welcome." "Cliff, seriously. I wanted to see you." His voice softened on those last words. And just like that, all my panic tangled together with excitement. Terrifying, overwhelming excitement. "When were you planning on telling me?" I asked weakly. "I just did." I dropped onto my couch laughing nervously. "This is actually happening." "Yeah," Cliff said quietly. Then after a small pause, "Unless you don't want it to." That immediately sobered me. Because despite all the flirting, all the late-night feelings, he was still giving me an out. Still being careful with me. And somehow that made me want him even more. "I want it," I admitted softly. The silence on the other end felt heavy. Then Cliff exhaled quietly. "Good," he murmured. And suddenly Friday felt both impossibly far away and way too close. The entire week before Cliff arrived, I was a complete disaster. I couldn't focus at work. I reread his messages constantly. I cleaned my apartment 3 separate times like some nervous sitcom husband preparing for company. At one point I caught myself reorganizing my kitchen spices alphabetically. That's how bad it got. Meanwhile Cliff thought my panic was hilarious. "You know I'm not inspecting your apartment, right?" he teased during a call Wednesday night. "You don't know that." I promise I'm more interested in inspecting you. I nearly dropped my phone. Cliff. What? He laughed. Too much? You cannot flirt with me while I'm mentally unstable. That's actually my favorite time to flirt with you. I hated how easy he made me smile. But underneath all the joking, I was terrified. Because what if things felt different in person? What if the chemistry disappeared? What if one of us realized we built the other up too much? I tried not to think about it. Failed completely. By Friday morning, my stomach was in knots. Cliff kept sending updates from the airport. Old lady beside me judging my breakfast choices. Someone's child just sneezed directly into my soul. If this plane crashes, tell everyone I was hot. I laughed at every message while simultaneously feeling like I might throw up. Then finally, boarding now. And suddenly this became real. Very real. The next few hours dragged painfully slow. I changed outfits at least 4 times before settling on black jeans and a dark hoodie. Casual enough to seem normal. Attractive enough that hopefully Cliff would still want to kiss me. God, even thinking that sentence made my heart pound. By the time I got to the airport, I was sweating. Actually sweating. I checked my phone every 30 seconds while standing near arrivals, pretending not to panic. Then my phone buzzed. Just landed. My stomach flipped violently. Everything around me suddenly felt too loud. Too bright. I typed back. Okay. Then immediately. That sounded calmer than I actually am. Cliff. Good, because I'm freaking out too. That somehow made me feel better. Barely. A few minutes later, people started flooding out through the arrival doors. Families. Business travelers. Couples reuniting dramatically like romance movies. And then I saw him. Instantly. Even in a crowd. Cliff looked exactly like his pictures and somehow even better at the same time. Dark hair slightly messy from the flight. Gray hoodie. Black duffel bag slung over one shoulder. And those eyes. The second they found me, his whole face changed. Like relief. Like excitement. Like he couldn't believe I was real either. My heart absolutely lost its mind. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Cliff smiled slowly and started walking toward me. And suddenly every anxious thought vanished beneath one overwhelming realization. I wanted him. Badly. Hey, he said softly once he reached me. Hearing his voice in real life nearly destroyed me. It sounded warmer in person somehow. Closer. Hey, I managed. We stood there awkwardly for half a second. Then Cliff laughed quietly. I'm trying really hard not to immediately kiss you right now. That tension snapped instantly. I laughed nervously. Yeah? Alex, he murmured, looking at me like he was trying to memorize my face already. You're even cuter in person. This is actually unfair. My face burned hot. And before I could overthink it, Cliff stepped closer. Slow enough to give me time to stop him. I didn't. Not even a little. His hand brushed lightly against my waist as he leaned in. Then his lips touched mine. Soft at first. Careful. But the second we kissed, something inside me completely gave out. Because holy shit. The chemistry was real. More than real. His mouth was warm and confident and familiar somehow, despite this being our first actual touch. I grabbed lightly onto the front of his hoodie without even thinking about it. And Cliff made this quiet sound against my lips that nearly killed me. When we finally pulled apart, both of us looked slightly stunned. Well? Cliff breathed. Yeah, I said weakly. He laughed softly, forehead brushing mine for just a second. That was dangerously good. I couldn't even argue. The drive back to my apartment was somehow both easy and painfully tense. Easy because talking to him still felt natural. Tense because now I knew exactly what kissing him felt like. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every red light became torture. At one point, Cliff rested his hand casually on my thigh while I drove. Casually. Meanwhile, I nearly drove onto the curb. You okay there? He teased. No, actually. His laugh filled the car. God. I loved that sound already. When we finally got to my apartment, the nerves came back hard. Because now we were alone. Actually alone. Cliff looked around while I awkwardly set down his bag. "This is exactly how I pictured your place," he said. "That's either insulting or concerning." "No," he smiled. "Comfortable." That one word warmed my chest embarrassingly fast. I showed him around unnecessarily even though my apartment was tiny. Kitchen. Bathroom. Living room. "Wow," Cliff said dramatically. "Incredible tour. 5 stars." "Oh, shut up." He grinned at me. And suddenly we were standing very close again. The air shifted instantly. That same heavy tension from our calls came rushing back 10 times stronger now that he was physically in front of me. Cliff looked at me quietly for a moment. Then softly, "Can I kiss you again?" The fact he asked nearly melted me. I nodded immediately. This kiss was different. Less careful. The second his hands settled on my waist, I was done for. Completely. I kissed him back harder, and Cliff made that same quiet noise again before pulling me closer against him. Every inch of me lit up instantly. His body felt solid and warm against mine. Real. One of his hands slid up my side slowly, fingers pressing lightly through my hoodie, and I swear my brain short-circuited. "Jesus," Cliff muttered softly against my mouth. "Been wanting to do this for weeks." "Same," I admitted breathlessly. He kissed me again immediately after that. Longer this time. Deeper. And somewhere in the middle of it, while standing in my tiny apartment with a man I technically met in a comment section, I realized something terrifying. I was already falling in love with him. That first night with Cliff felt surreal. Not because anything huge happened immediately. Honestly, it was the small things that got to me most. The way he casually stole fries off my plate when we ordered takeout. The way he kept touching me absent-mindedly while we watched a movie. A hand on my knee. Fingers brushing my arm. His foot nudging mine under the coffee table. Like he physically couldn't stop himself from checking that I was still there. And the scary part? I loved it. At one point during the movie, Cliff stretched out beside me on the couch and rested his head against my shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. My heart nearly exploded. "You smell good," he mumbled sleepily. I laughed softly. "That's a weird thing to say." "No," he murmured without moving. "It's important information." I looked down at him smiling against my shoulder and felt something dangerous settle deeper in my chest. Because this didn't feel temporary. It didn't feel like some online fantasy crashing into reality. It felt easy. Real. Later that night we ended up talking in my bedroom with the lights low, both of us sitting against the headboard while random music played quietly from my speaker. Cliff looked ridiculously comfortable there already. Like he belonged. That realization scared me a little. "You're staring again," he said lazily. "I'm allowed." "True." He smiled softly before looking down at his hands. Then quieter. "I was nervous you wouldn't like me in person." I blinked at him. "What?" He shrugged one shoulder. "I don't know. Online is different." The fact that Cliff, confident, funny, gorgeous Cliff, had been nervous too made my chest ache. I shifted closer without thinking. "I liked you immediately," I admitted. His eyes lifted to mine slowly. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Cliff looked at me for a second like he was trying to decide something. Then he reached up and touched my face gently. Not rushed. Just soft fingertips against my jaw. "You have no idea how hard it was waiting to kiss you at the airport," he murmured. My pulse instantly jumped. "You did pretty bad, actually." He laughed quietly. "I know." Then he kissed me again. Slow this time. Unhurried. And somehow that was even worse for my self-control. Because every second of it felt intentional. The way his thumb brushed lightly along my jaw. The way his mouth lingered against mine. The way he exhaled softly when I kissed him back harder. I climbed into his lap before I fully realized I was doing it. Cliff's hands immediately settled on my waist instinctively. Alex, he breathed softly against my mouth. That sound alone nearly ruined me. I could feel how warm he was beneath me, how steady his hands felt against my body despite the tension between us. And underneath all of it was this overwhelming feeling of familiarity. Like somehow we'd skipped months of awkwardness and uncertainty. We stayed like that, kissing slowly while the music played quietly in the background. Every so often Cliff would pull back just enough to look at me. Like he still couldn't believe I was real. "You're prettier than your pictures," he admitted quietly at one point. I groaned dramatically. "That's such an evil thing to say to someone while making out with them." "It's true. You're trying to distract me." "Working?" "Unfortunately, yes." "Very well." Eventually my forehead dropped against his shoulder while I laughed breathlessly. "This is insane." "What is?" "We met in a comment section." Cliff snorted softly. "That's actually embarrassing for us." "A little. But kinda romantic too," he admitted. I smiled against his neck. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Kinda." The room fell softer after that. Comfortable silence. Warmth. The occasional lazy kiss. Then Cliff's fingers traced lightly along my side and his voice lowered again. "You know what I kept thinking about before I got here?" I looked at him carefully. "What?" "What did it feel like to hold you?" That answer hit me harder than anything physical could have. Because underneath all the attraction and flirting, Cliff wanted closeness. Wanted me. I curled closer against him instinctively, and his arms tightened around my waist immediately. Like he'd been wanting to do that all night. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah." I hesitated. Then admitted. "This just feels really good." Cliff's expression softened instantly. "Yeah," he murmured. "It really does." We ended up lying down eventually, still talking quietly in the dark. No pressure. No rushing. Just tangled together under my blankets while the city lights glowed faintly through the window. At one point Cliff brushed his fingers through my hair lazily and said, "You know what's weird?" "What?" "I think I started liking you before I even knew what you looked like." That made my chest physically ache. Because same. Completely same. I turned toward him slightly in the darkness. "I think I was already screwed the second you made that grandma pasta joke." Cliff laughed tiredly. "Yeah? Yeah. It was over for me." His hand slid gently along my back. "Good," he whispered. Then after a pause, "Because I don't think this is casual for me anymore." The honesty in his voice stole every remaining breath from my lungs. And lying there wrapped up with him in the middle of the night, I realized something terrifyingly simple. I didn't want this weekend to end. Sunday came way too fast. I noticed it the second I woke up. That heavy feeling in my chest. The quiet awareness that time was running out. Cliff was still asleep beside me, sprawled across my bed like he'd lived there for years instead of 2 nights. One arm stretched toward my side of the mattress, hair messy against the pillow, mouth slightly open. I smiled before I could stop myself. Then immediately got hit with something terrifying. I could genuinely picture waking up beside him every morning. And once that thought entered my brain, it refused to leave. A few minutes later Cliff stirred awake slowly. The second he saw me looking at him, he smiled sleepily. "Creepy," he mumbled. "You drool." "I do not." "You absolutely do." He grabbed my waist suddenly and pulled me down against him before I could escape. I laughed immediately. "Cliff, 5 more minutes." His voice was rough with sleep, face buried against my neck now, and honestly, I would have given that man 5 more hours if he asked. We stayed tangled together for a while, just talking quietly. Comfortable silence kept slipping between conversations naturally now. No awkwardness. No pressure. Just us. Eventually Cliff tilted his head back slightly to look at me. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "You do this thing when you're nervous." I frowned. "No, I don't." You play with your sleeves. I looked down automatically, and immediately realized I was literally doing it right then. Cliff grinned triumphantly. See? That's fake news. Alex, I've watched you do it for 2 days straight. I rolled my eyes dramatically while he laughed softly. God, I loved making him laugh. That afternoon we walked around downtown together after grabbing coffee. And honestly, it felt disgustingly couple-y. The casual shoulder bumps. Him stealing sips of my drink. His hand finding the small of my back when crowds got too thick. At one point we stopped outside a bookstore window and I caught our reflections side by side. And something about seeing us together like that hit me unexpectedly hard. Because we looked right. Like this made sense. Cliff noticed me staring and bumped my shoulder lightly. What? Nothing. You're doing the thinking face. I do not have a thinking face. You absolutely do. I laughed despite myself. Then quieter. I just like this. His expression softened instantly. Yeah, he murmured. Me too. For a second neither of us moved. The city noise blurred around us while we just stood there smiling stupidly at each other. Then Cliff reached down and laced his fingers through mine naturally. Like it was instinct. And my heart melted completely. That evening hit harder. Because suddenly we were counting hours instead of days. Cliff's flight was early Monday morning. Neither of us wanted to talk about it directly. So instead we ordered food, watched terrible reality TV, and pretended time wasn't moving. But underneath all of it, I could feel the sadness building. Late that night we ended up back in bed again, lights off, bodies close. Cliff traced lazy patterns against my arm while quiet music played from my phone's speaker. I don't want to leave, he admitted softly. The honesty in his voice hurt. I know. I mean it. I know, I repeated quietly. He exhaled slowly. Then after a pause. This is gonna sound insane. What? I think meeting you ruined dating for me. I laughed softly against his shoulder. That's dramatic. No, Cliff murmured. I'm serious. He shifted slightly until we were face to face in the dark. I've never felt this comfortable with someone before. That confession settled deep in my chest. Because I understood it completely. There was something terrifyingly natural about him. Like my brain had skipped all the usual fear and uncertainty and just decided. There you are. I touched his face gently in the dark. This doesn't feel casual for me either, I admitted. Cliff looked at me quietly for a second. Then, good. Simple answer. But it nearly wrecked me anyway. A while later, after we'd both gone quiet, Cliff suddenly asked, Do you remember the first thing I ever said to you? I laughed immediately. The fish picture comment? Iconic, honestly. You're so annoying. You loved it. Unfortunately, he was right. I smiled into the darkness before admitting. I used to look for your username in comments. Cliff went quiet. Then softly. I still do. That one got me. Badly. Because somehow even after all this, after kissing him and holding him and hearing him laugh in my apartment, part of me still remembered those lonely nights before we met. Scrolling mindlessly. Feeling disconnected from everything. And then suddenly there was Cliff. A stupid username in a comment section that slowly became the best part of my day. The next morning was awful. Actually awful. Neither of us said much while getting ready because the mood felt too heavy already. I drove him to the airport in near silence except for quiet music playing in the background. Cliff kept looking over at me every few minutes like he was memorizing my face again. By the time we parked, my chest hurt. Inside the terminal, everything felt rushed and unfair. People moving everywhere. Announcements overhead. The horrible realization that this weekend was ending. Cliff looked at me for a long moment near security. Then quietly. So, this isn't the end, right? The fact he sounded nervous asking that shattered me a little. I stepped closer immediately. Not even close. Relief flashed across his face instantly. Then he kissed me. Right there in the middle of the airport. Soft. Certain. Like a promise. When we pulled apart, Cliff rested his forehead lightly against mine. Good, he murmured. Because I'm kinda in love with you already. My breath caught completely. And for one stunned second I couldn't even speak. Then finally I laughed softly, emotional and overwhelmed all at once. Yeah, I admitted quietly. I think I'm kinda in love with you too. Cliff smiled at me like I'd just given him everything he wanted. And standing there in an airport after meeting a man from a comment section, I realized something unbelievable. Sometimes love doesn't arrive dramatically. Sometimes it starts with a stupid joke online. And a stranger who keeps making you feel less alone. Long distance was hard. That's the first thing I learned after Cliff flew home. The second thing? Missing someone can physically hurt. The first few days after he left felt wrong in this weird quiet way. My apartment still smelled faintly like his cologne. His hoodie was draped over the side of my couch because he'd forgotten it, and every time I looked at it my chest tightened. I didn't realize how quickly he'd become part of my routine until he wasn't physically there anymore. But somehow, we got even closer after that weekend. We started falling asleep on FaceTime almost every night. Not intentionally at first. One of us would just get tired mid-conversation, and eventually waking up to Cliff's sleepy face on my phone became normal. One Tuesday morning I woke up to him still there, hair messy, blinking slowly at the screen. You snore a little, he mumbled. I immediately sat up. I absolutely do not. You absolutely do. You're a liar. He smiled lazily. Still love you though. That sentence hit me so hard I forgot what we were arguing about. Love. We hadn't technically said it yet. Not directly. But it was there now. Everywhere. In the way he checked if I ate dinner. In the way I waited for his texts all day. In the way we both got quieter whenever one of us had to hang up. About 3 weeks after the airport goodbye, Cliff surprised me again. I was working late when my phone buzzed with a message. Open your door. I frowned immediately. What? Then another text. Alex, seriously, open the door. My heart nearly stopped. I sprinted across my apartment so fast I almost slipped. And there he was. Standing outside my door, smiling nervously with an overnight bag hanging off his shoulder. For one full second I just stared at him. Then, you're insane. That's not a hello. I launched myself at him before he could say anything else. Cliff laughed as he caught me easily, arms wrapping tight around my waist while I buried my face against his neck. You flew here without warning? I asked into his shoulder. You sounded sad on the phone yesterday. That answer alone almost destroyed me. I pulled back just enough to look at him. You came because I sounded sad? You think I'm letting my boyfriend be sad alone? Boyfriend. My stomach flipped violently. You just called me your boyfriend. Cliff suddenly looked slightly nervous. I mean, unless that's weird? I kissed him before he could keep spiraling. Hard enough that he stumbled backward, laughing into my mouth. No, I breathed once we pulled apart. Definitely not weird. The smile he gave me after that was ridiculous. Warm. Happy. Completely genuine. And suddenly everything felt lighter. That weekend was different from the first one. Less nervousness. Less tension. More comfort. We cooked together badly. Stayed in bed too long. Argued over movies. Made grocery shopping feel weirdly romantic somehow. At one point we were walking through the store when Cliff reached over and dropped random candy into the cart. We don't need that, I said immediately. Yes, we do. No, we don't. He looked me dead in the eyes. Alex. It's dinosaur gummies. I stared at him for a second. Then sighed dramatically. Fine. Thank you for your bravery during this difficult moment. I laughed so hard an old woman nearby smiled at us knowingly. And that was the moment it really hit me. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't just chemistry or excitement or online fantasy. This was real life slowly intertwining together. A few months later, I took a week off work and went to stay with Cliff. Seeing his apartment for the first time felt strangely emotional. Because suddenly I was stepping into all the spaces I'd only heard about through calls. The couch where he fell asleep during movies. The kitchen where he made coffee every morning. The bedroom where he used to send me sleepy voice notes at 2 a.m. At one point I was looking through his bookshelf when something caught my eye. A printed screenshot pinned near his desk. I walked closer and immediately started laughing. Because it was our very first interaction. Okay, but what if it's a really big fish? I turned around slowly. You printed our comment section? Cliff looked 0% ashamed. It's historical. You're unbelievable. You fell in love with me because of that comment, actually. I did not. You absolutely did. Unfortunately, maybe he was right. That night we ended up sitting on his balcony together wrapped in blankets, while the city lights glowed below us. Cliff rested his head against mine quietly. You know what's crazy? He murmured. What? If I hadn't replied to your comment, we probably never would have met. That thought hit me harder than expected. Because it was true. One tiny moment. One stupid joke online. And somehow it changed both our lives completely. I looked over at him quietly. Best comment section ever, I said. Cliff smiled softly. Then finally, he said the words we'd both been carrying around for months. I love you, Alex. Simple. Certain. Real. And hearing it felt like coming home somehow. I smiled so hard my face hurt. Then kissed him slowly before whispering back. I love you too, Cliff. And honestly, I still think it's insane that I found the love of my life buried under a random internet comment. But every time Cliff laughs at one of my terrible jokes. Every time he reaches for my hand automatically. Every time I wake up beside him feeling safe and wanted and loved. I realize maybe it wasn't insane at all. Maybe sometimes the right person finds you exactly